Oh, David, you were as delicate as Vivaldi and as strong as a Mack truck. So read the painter Robert Motherwell's epitaph for the American sculptor David Smith, who died in a car crash in 1965 at the age of 59. Smith used welded steel to create three-dimensional landscapes and often used found objects in his sculptures, including disused tools from machine rooms and factories where he himself sometimes worked as a welder. He's often described as a sculptor of the abstract expressionist movement, but he roamed free of any labels, except America's greatest sculptor. Now, 40 years after his death, Tate Modern has mounted a retrospective, and there's perhaps no better building for it than the former power station. I spoke to the British sculptor Anthony Caro, who got to know David Smith when he was teaching in the States. What is so important about Smith's work, and for you, what makes the connection with you?
Well, the connection with me is that I knew him, and I used to go up there when we were at Bennington. We'd go up to his place, and he'd come down at the weekends and so on. So we knew him quite well. So there's a kind of emotional tie there. But the work is wonderful, and in a way, it was the continuation of a tradition, of the Picasso, Gonzalez tradition, and then there's David Smith, and all the sculptors who came after him. I mean, he's an important tie. He changed art completely. It's so delicate, it's so sensitive, and of course David was a very big man who would never talk about art stuff. He was always, he was always talking about, welding and the practical things. He puts all sorts of found objects in, but why not? And I think that was a big thrill for me coming from England and going to America and seeing what David did. You could be freer. You could be freer than we ever imagined in Europe. And I think American art did that for us.
What are your favourite things?
Some of them are shown at the Tate. Great big wagon, the Sentinels, Australia, they're all wonderful. There's open things, Hudson River landscape. There's a list as long as your arm.
Talk to me just about the wagon, for example.
It's such an extraordinary thing to make a sculpture with wheels. He would use anything, he would bring anything to sculpture. So there's no rules. That was great. The rules were discarded by David.
The exhibition also has elements of work he did towards the end of his life.
I think he was trying at the end to get some volume back into his sculpture, and that was why he did the cube eyes, at the same time sort of dissolving them by making them shiny. And I think he really succeeded with that last window.
Was Smith also very modest about his own achievements? He sounds like he was a man who just worked away quietly.
He didn't talk about his achievements, but you would go up to his place and you'd see, I've never seen anything like it, 2 fields of sculptures, 80 sculptures. Put them out. They weren't arranged, they were put. There's a picture of him looking out down the field. I think he put them out to reassure himself that that he was doing something worthwhile. I think it was so much a life. It was entirely a life. He said to me, never try to save on your art. I buy the most expensive paper. He said, when my wife wanted a refrigerator, but I wanted a welder, we got the welder. So that was his style. He was very kind. He was a warm man, but sculpture was his life, his religion.